Hello, my name is Lily, and today I will be discussing my research towards a sector scan on a small scale indie game studio named Flamebait Games. I will be discussing and answering how they market their games and gradually focus on one specific game of theirs and how it meets the criteria of my points, specifically looking at their main qualities, approach, and other significant information on how they market and design their games. Flamebait Games is a small indie game studio based in Skövde, Sweden. Initially, work began in 2015 when a group of university students banded together to create games with the purpose of experimenting and having fun. Currently, there are 5 people who work at Flamebait Games. A few years after their debut, they hired a marketing manager named Tomoko Miya, who handles market research and analyzes trends. Their team typically goes by the Joystick Cowboys or Console Cowboys. Trying to get discovered and finding players to buy and play indie games is as difficult as ever, as AAA games and big game companies tend to steal most of the spotlight. Flamebait Games got quite lucky, however, getting found by big YouTubers such as Jacksepticeye and PewDiePie, which I admit is how I found out about Flamebait's Passport the Starving Artist. It most certainly had its benefits, which helped their games shoot to fame. Flamebait's games are popular over the world, and according to an article written by Tomoko Miya in 2020, it was recognized that there was increasing popularity to the market of their games in Asia, which resulted in them in adding Chinese to their games on iOS and Japanese on Nintendo Switch. They also released a closed alpha test to the members of their Discord server and followers on Twitter, Facebook, and their devlog, which lasted for around 24 hours. It was expected to have only around 100 sign-ups. However, the final figure massively surpassed their expectation, where they got over 400 sign-ups. According to their official website, there are currently only 4 developers and 1 person in charge of marketing. The team consists of game designers, music designers, animators, and programmers, which they refer to as distributor of HZ, co-jouster, bossman, which is the CEO, rotator of bones, and marketing magician. When making their games, they have a shared responsibility for each role. Obviously, each member has their own area of expertise, but they will all help each other or fill in for one another when needed. The game I want to focus on exploring is named Passport the Starving Artist. The player plays as a starving artist who has an expensive baguette and wine addiction. In order to survive, the player needs to create and sell their art. I chose this game because I used to play it as a child after watching PewDiePie play it on YouTube. It's the most recognizable game of the company and is very popular. Players have an opportunity to create their own art, which most of the time turns out to be a funny and an enjoyable aspect of the game. However, some players take it upon themselves to create really amazing masterpieces through this game, which they pour their heart and soul into, which is an amazing feat in itself. To communicate with their audience, they took it upon themselves to have accounts on social media such as Twitter and Facebook, as well as a devlog. However, according to an article by Tomoko Miya on their devlog, the main language they communicate in is English, and realize they have a lot of non-English speaking players and fans. To be able to combat this, they have their own Discord server, where they have created dedicated channels in different languages for their non-English speaking players. They also realised that some players don't communicate as much, and when asked, it was because some players are just in the server to find out about upcoming games and important updates, which I think is really good on the company, because they wouldn't have found that out if they hadn't been effectively communicating and listening to their fans and players. As they won an Indie Game Award for Best Visual Art in the Indie Game Awards in 2023, they went to the game show in Taipei to show gratitude to their fans in Asia, as their game Passepartout, the Starving Artist, was very popular there, and they wanted to further communicate with their players. One of their ways to make money involved securing $2 million in funding for a game without tying themselves to a funder or investor. They came up with a plan to maximize passive employee revenues through a scheme called licensing PIPs. It stands for Personal Intellectual Property and could be thought of something that someone is building on a daily basis through their actions. They utilize PIPs by building foundations through smart agreements. The first way was by using EULAs for consumers the same way, but for their employees. The reason being that consumers typically don't read them, and the same goes for employees, so they were able to add some extra terms without exception, with the promise of earning revenue. The second way was assessing the opportunities they had with their PIPs. Not every PIP is fit for every opportunity, so they had to assess what they had carefully. The third way was a hustle. They had to search for these opportunities and were approached by another game developer and were able to strike a deal to make a dating sim for another studio called Rotten Raccoon Studios. Their next goal was to try to turn their employees into NFTs on the blockchain. To market their game, they have released their game Passepartout, the Starving Artist, as well as other various games of theirs on popular game platforms such as Steam, Nintendo Store, iOS, and Android. On Steam, it is currently listed at a market price of $9.99 US. The price can change, and over the years the lowest price it has hit was $4.99 US. On Nintendo Store, it is the same price. However, on iOS, it is listed at £4.99 British pounds, and on Google Play, it is listed at £3.69 British pounds. This is how they market and sell their product. The team values giving their players more creative freedom, which is certainly shown in their debut game, where players can create any kind of art, and as it is a game where you have to create art to progress, in a way it pushes players to release their creative side. They want their games to meet players' expectation, and they do this by listening to player feedback and strive to make their games better. They also value experimentation, whether it's through their players or even themselves when creating games. The team has set the standard for creative games, and I think it would be a tough competition to replicate the feeling you get when playing Passepartout. To conclude, I would like to say how I believe I would be a good fit for the organisation. This is because I believe the same things as they do when it comes to core values when creating a game. If I worked there, I would be able to offer my creative expertise and help plan and design their games. As I previously mentioned, how they never have one sole responsibility when designing a game. I feel like I would really like their way of working, as I have experience in all roles and like to experiment with different things. That now concludes my sector scan, and thank you for listening.